Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI Brand Response Council. These 20-ish minute live conversations feature leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry, and they're scheduled twice a month, all the way back to the summer of 2020. Coming up on 4 years, Chris. Can't believe it. Before we get to today's conversation, a housekeeping note: we'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them, and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of this episode. Today, we're happy to welcome a trio of experts from the European D2C space to this virtual stage. The European direct-to-consumer marketing industry remains strong, with more than 700 million TV viewers in the space, and TV ad spend in Western Europe alone nearing $30 billion annually. The outlet remains a power player in performance marketing efforts across the continent. Still, as technology advances, digital ad spend is closing in on 100 billion annually in Europe. So too do the options and opportunities for performance marketers, both old and new, in this important sector. Today, Take 20 host and Brand Response Council Chair Chris Foster of Modern Postcard welcomes Ina Bauer of Austria's MediaShop GmbH, Sergio do Nascimento of Spain's Products to TV, and UK-based Budd Margolis to discuss the latest in the marketplace. Welcome, everyone. Chris, take it away.
Greetings. Thank you so much, Thomas, and thank you, everybody, for joining. This is our first European Take 20. I don't think it will be our last. So excited to have you guys on, and really welcome to Take 20. As Tom mentioned, in the US, first of all, welcome to episode 83. That's right, 83, a terrific number for this group. So in the US, direct response marketing evolution as seen on TV infomercials into our current omnichannel integrated customer journey management seems natural, right? The evolution just happened. Of course, in hindsight, it seems natural. But as marketing channels link together and viewing habits go online and streaming and CTV creates new opportunity exposures, how we as industry practitioners view direct response has also evolved. We've gotten to the place where all marketing is direct response marketing. And in the US market space, when everything could be considered direct response, the question is, what's the perspective in Europe? There's GDPR, there's data privacy, and then constituents from multiple countries can be involved in products being seen, purchased, and shipped. These are unique situations to the European market. So what can we learn in the US market about the best practices in European performance marketing? And we're so excited to start with our world tour in Vienna. Ina, talk to us.
Yes,
how did
Chris.
MediaShop manage the transition from what you might call old-fashioned teleshopping into an omnichannel world?
I think a lot of it happened organically, like you said, but I think I want to point out two things that have characterized how we operated for the past years. We are constantly reinventing ourselves and challenging ourselves. So just the way we test products, how we go about it is we test a product on TV, and if it works, then we scale it big and we go through all sale channels. And we've done the same with everything. We've always looked at how can we expand our business. We've always looked for new sales strategies, and then we've gone from there. So we started with TV, we added retail to the mix, then digital, print, and social media, and we're constantly still doing it. So right now what we're doing is we're challenging ourselves again, looking at data and artificial intelligence, machine learning. So it's always about doing what we do best, but looking at how can we expand it and grow the business. That's one thing. And the other thing I want to point out is that we've taken a lot of our core know-how and brought it into the company. For example, we brought core know-how like trend scouting or product development and even film production in-house. And that has helped us to be quite independent. And even when we knew we wanted to go a certain way and we didn't have the know-how in-house and we didn't necessarily know how to go about it, we looked on the outside. For example, when we decided we want to also focus on print, we acquired a company that was really good in Switzerland, that was really successful with print formats, and we developed our own catalog format with them very successfully. So it's always about, for us, it's always been about reinventing and challenging what we do, and not relying on what works, but looking at what could work next.
I love that, Ina, and I love that sense, because as agencies develop a certain expertise in one area, you know that you need to start adding other channels and adding other expertise. So the question is, do you buy it? Do you grow it in-house? Do you partner? So it seems like a natural evolution on your side from your agency to kind of expand the product offerings, because brands now are asking for more than just one channel. Even if you test it on TV, you have to apply some of those best practices, and to keep that in-house makes a lot of sense. I guess,
Exactly.
Bud, I'll go to you now. You've been involved with video and performance marketing, I don't know, since the late 1800s, it seems. You've done everything, but also you've done it in a variety of countries. So what are the main differences in handling programs from one nation to next? You've done Africa, you've done Europe. How does it change?
The biggest difference I've seen is with Asia. It's a completely different ballgame there. And the web design, the consumer messaging, shopping channels will charge customers to put their products on the channel, so they're selling airtime. Completely different animal. But with DRTV, there's still some kind of a universal average, a global aspect to it. And each country has some modifications that you need to make. And even when you make them for the regulations and the culture and the economy, you still have to monitor everything minute by minute. So before, we used to make changes, every couple months we would, tweak an infomercial. Today, we're looking at it hour by hour. How is it doing? What's the problem? Should we have different kinds in the morning, different versions in the evening? And that's producing a few percentage points of different revenues. But then you also have to be aware of what else is going on. What are we competing against? Is there a news event? Is there a sporting event? Is the weather terrible? Sometimes that's good for us. Sometimes it's terrible for us. So we're always learning. We're always experimenting. Ina is very accurate when she describes the process of bringing things in-house. You can do it yourself. I'm advising a lot of companies now on how to make their own productions. And in China, most of the manufacturers now have studios. They're influencer TikTok studios. They're making on the floor live sales with direct to consumers. And that's spreading all over China. So we've sort of seen the social influencer move now into the factory. And they've gotten rid of those people who were selling in the millions and millions and making fortunes. They've cracked down on that, and they've brought it all inside now. So there's huge transformations going on. So Asia is just completely different than what's going on in Europe. And in Europe, we have Brexit now. We have wars. We have supply chain chaos with the Suez down 60% and the Panama Canal from climate down another 40%. So all these things are going to impact what we sell and how we sell it.
That's fantastic, and I want to touch on that a little bit later, because what you spoke to was this interesting cultural change of bringing the detail of a TikTok video and pulling that in house, right? They'd have a marketing team, they'd have a copy team, but now they've got a social influencer TikTok team bringing it in house. Do you think that is going to expand into other countries, or is it unique to the Asian marketing culture?
It's interesting because the social influencer revolution is still mainly based in Asia. And it hasn't spread around the world quite as it has in Asia. And now they are starting to change for many reasons. The economy in China is going through a period of flux.
Right.
Generally, we have recessionary, influences. They don't know how to sell to the West as well as they should, right? So we're waiting to see what is the next step even after this. But every couple, 3 years, it'll continue to evolve, because once everybody is doing it, somebody's got to do something different.
That's right, but ain't that the way, right?
I just want to add, I want to agree with what Bud said, because I think that's important. The big trend that comes, from China, of course, we're looking at it, and we've evaluated online live selling several times. And I always smile and I say, DRTV, teleshopping commercials, we've had the original influencers in the way back when, because what we do with testimonials, it's influencing on TV. So we started the trend basically. But it's important. We've looked at it, and like Bud said, in China, online live selling is a big trend. The influencer system, it works differently in Europe, and we've been watching it. We've tried a little bit, but it hasn't picked up as much as you'd think it would when looking over to China. So I think that's one major thing too, is always to look at the trends, but also know when maybe it's not the right time or the trend isn't the right one for your country, for your background.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. And so many of those influencers and on the social commerce. In fact, there's a terrific article on the PDMI newsletter this morning. If you guys haven't subscribed, please subscribe to that. But they talked about how Meta and Amazon now are partnering for more social commerce to make it easier to sell Amazon on Meta, the platform, and a lot of it, and of course an Insta, and that really tailors down to the younger generation, right? So these, the influencers you talked about, Ina, in the past were, maybe known folks, but now influencers are getting younger, and younger people are responding to influencers of their own age. And so, Sergio, I guess I would ask you about this younger generation and this new generation. They're keyed into mobile, and they're keyed into online, they're keyed into TikTok, etc. So how does quote unquote television fit as an international marketing plan to engage the younger generation?
Well, on my opinion, TV still needs to have a very important presence on any marketing mix on our business. The main question for me is, who do we want to sell to? If it's young people, of course we have to adapt to those more recent trends of the social media, the online sales. But if you want to sell to older people, you need to have TV. Otherwise, you're going to miss a very important part of your sales, of your potential sales. So more than asking if the young people will be touched by TV or not, I would say that who they want to target product by product. Mm-hmm. It's not, we cannot generalize that one product will target everybody in terms of demographics. If our aim is to sell to older demographic, TV, it's a must-have. Otherwise, you're going to miss it. Sure. If you have a product that you want to aim to younger generations, of course, the online and the social media, it's a must, because the trend is that, and people say that younger people don't watch TV or they don't watch the same way. I would say that these days I have clients that tell me 50-60% of my sales are online sales. But when I ask them, okay, what if you would take TV out of your marketing mix, would you have those sales online? And the answer is always no.
Right.
That they have, let's put it this way, we close the sales online, but they come from watching TV. I mean, people eventually are trying to have more information. They didn't have the time to see all the information, or the spot was too small, too short, and they didn't understand well. So they go to the online where they can take their time to finalize, to understand and to finalize the buy. But the majority have seen it on TV, have seen the infomercial, have seen the spot, sure. And then they'll finalize the buying process online. So I would say TV, and on the specific question, I would say that TV must have a strong presence on all marketing mix that we want to do in Europe.
Well, that makes sense, and it speaks to what you had mentioned, where you start on TV, and as you guys have developed your own marketing plans, are there certain ideas that your agency has borrowed from U.S. marketers? And if so, I'm curious about what they might be. And then also, what kind of ideas should U.S. marketers borrow from European marketers? What are we missing that you guys have discovered?
I think that's a difficult question, because you really have to know the different markets that well. I know the European market very well, But I know that in the past, of course, we go, to the same business events with all other partners that we have. So you exchange information. The idea to go into retail was something we picked up from the American market. Also, for example, I know that in the American market, shorter infomercial format spots perform better than in Europe, where we still have very long formats. The shortest format TV format commercial that we air are 5 minutes. Longest usually go 15-30 minutes, and we air several hours. So there are differences. But for me at the moment, it's not so much about the comparison between the markets within the same field of expertise. It's more about going somewhere totally different. Right now, for example, we're looking and we're talking with startups. We're looking at companies that only do online sales, a lot of e-com, because we just think that at the moment with the technology advancing so fast, that's where we're getting our ideas from. I agree with what Sergio said. For us, TV is still the most important thing. Our online sales are just as high as the TV sales, even higher, but it's driven by TV. But TV is changing, and even if you still find, the old viewership or the older viewership on TV, it's changing, and we're looking at the fact, how can we change our commercials to go with the changes that are happening on TV. I'm a big fan of TV. I love it, and I believe in it. I think it has its right to be here, and it will always be here in some way in terms of live events, news, But the way viewers are watching is changing. So we're looking at how do we need to change as a company that sells products mainly through TV, and all other channels, but those are all fed by TV. So how do we need to change our commercials in order to fit the way our customers are watching TV these days, watching content. And what I said before is we talk a lot to startups. We had Microsoft come visit us the other day and give a presentation on artificial intelligence, on data, and we've learned so much in our approach. Sometimes you think if you're not set and totally adapted yet with the data you have, with all the information that can be utilized, there's so many ways you can go about using what you have already. So my recommendation would be for everybody in our industry, not only to look in the different countries and the different markets, but look outside your own expertise or your own field of business. Talk to companies that do something completely different, because they have ways of approaching things that you didn't even know, were there or you could do. And that's where a lot of our ideas and strategies come from at the moment.
That's wonderful. I love that. And I think that, that interesting comment on the attention span, where our commercials are a lot shorter in the US than they are in Europe. I can tell you, being old as I am, that our attention span in America has shrunk. They say that our attention span is less than a goldfish, and I believe it. And I think that has presented some challenges. I think that's an interesting thing. It could be that the European consumer is a little bit more educated. They're a little bit more willing to listen for a longer period of time than the American audience. So that's an interesting distinction you brought up. And I guess, when it comes to the product launches, as you walk through both startups and more longstanding companies. But I guess the question for you, and by the way, guys, I'd mention is Bud is calling from Southwest London, right next to near my beloved Brentford Bees and their stadium. So we got all the countries covered, because Sergio's calling to us from outside of Lisbon in Portugal. So it's actually a really interesting triangulation. So Bud, when it comes to kind of a successful international product launch, I'm sure that there are some fundamentals that repeat themselves, but I also think, like you had mentioned, there's so many changes happening, especially in Asia. What are the differences, and what are the fundamentals, and what are the tactics, and how they've changed?
Oh boy, that's a book and a half.
It's a 2-hour question, I know. I'm gonna
in a minute. I'll answer the previous question briefly. What Europe excels at is respect for local cultures. So look at Europe. It's, I know there's like all these countries and the stars and the EU flag, but each of those countries is also broken up into very distinct cantons and provinces, and with dialects and accents and everything. So Europeans have a broader sense of the different, whereas in America you have like pan-national campaigns. And nobody can do that globally. It's very difficult to get that local feel. And so my first thought is that you have to put together a string of good partnerships. If you're outside of the industry and looking to get inside the industry, you need somebody who has representatives scattered all over the place. And then you need to do experimental programs to learn what works where. And if you have good partners, they'll help you to establish that knowledge base. And I'm a big believer, and I've been working very seriously with AI. And AI is going to make changes on the fly, second by second changes. During a program, things will change because AI will see what's happening and it will try different things and find the right path and cure cancer and manuscripts nobody's ever been able to read before. And also there's some problems that might come about, by the way, but I think AI is going to solve a lot of issues for us in the way that we efficiently deal with the mountains of data we can't really perceive right now. And going global just means you're going to exponentially magnify the amount of data that's very disparate.
That's a great, that's a fantastic insight, because it is true. While we have, regional differences, between the Southeast and Georgia or the Northeast with Vermont and the like, generally a campaign isn't regional in the States, right? It's not. But I can see how that would be such a powerful nuance for marketers if they can regionally adjust their programs, in France or in Spain and the like. I guess, Sergio, I'll ask you, because he had talked about, folks looking to get into Europe, right? If a US marketer wanted to expand into Europe or Mexico or other international markets, what are kind of like these high level points of advice? I know that that's also a 2-hour question, but what are some just general things that they should think about that they might not know?
Well, like Bud said, it's almost 30 countries that we are talking about as a European community. So to try and generalize as much as possible and to try to adapt to each country, it's highly difficult. Anyway, in terms of a US company wanting to bring their products into Europe and sell them on the DRTV business, we are talking about 2 or 3 main things. In terms of the marketing assets, you have to be prepared to bring everything as prepared as possible. I mean, 30 years ago or 25 years ago when I started, the US companies would send you a 2-minute spot and a 30-minute infomercial, and that was about it. These days, if you come to the market with that, you're not going to enter, period. You need to be prepared with marketing tools that will allow you to sell on TV. Okay, we need the spots, we need the infomercials. There are, as Ina said, in Germany, 30 minutes is still something that is it's a used format. There are other countries that will never do anything. They will never do it, and the maximum they will go is 15 minutes. So you need to be prepared to have formats that will fit in each one of these countries. If you want to sell on social media and online, you have to be prepared. I mean, you have to have smaller 15-second, 30-second clips. You need to have high-quality pictures. It seems obvious, but it's not. I mean, I represent products from companies from the US into Europe, and most of them don't have it. When they want to launch a new product, they are not prepared. They are expecting the client, I mean, my client, the distributors on each country, to develop their own assets for each one of the sales sellers. They won't do it. These days, it costs too much money. It consumes too much energy, and companies are shrinking. I mean, they are having less people. They are having less money to test, and all this together in one product, and then you multiply it by 30 or 40. tests that they will have to do in, I don't know how many months. It's a lot of money. So we have to bring to the distributors as many assets as possible to make it easy for them. Because if they don't have it, your product will not get in. We talked about TV, it's social media. If you want to go into retail, we need to have prepared from the beginning good POS materials. If you don't have a nice, beautiful exposure of the product, I mean, just simple things. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you need to have a solution for each one of these sales channels. Otherwise, it won't work.
That's fantastic advice. Well, we are coming on 30 minutes, which has been fantastic. I knew it would go lickety-split because we've got such fantastic masters of their craft. Thomas, I guess I did have one final question, but instead of my questions, I'd rather hear from the audience and see if they have a question for this fantastic group.
Yeah, we have a couple of good ones. One's pretty easy and one's a little more challenging, but we're going to ask it anyway. The first one, the easy one for everybody. What products and services, which markets are having the most success right now in D2C that you see in the countries you serve or across the continent?
Well, from my side, in terms of what my clients right now are asking, it's housewares products. I mean, kitchen appliances. This more and more of this type of product that are, let's put it this way, simpler to get on air, because maybe 10 years ago it would be ingestibles, weight loss will be something that it's complicated in terms of now have registered, or maybe the claims won't, I mean the control of the authorities in each country are more complicated or are more demanding, and clients don't want to go through that process. So simpler in the way of presenting a product. I mean, it's a kitchen product or a housewares, I mean a vacuum cleaner. They are simpler in the way they come to the client, to the consumer. That's my sense these days.
I would say, yeah, I would say that the trends are going to be more features, more advantages, more benefits, more cost analysis, value proposition products. So we have air fryers. The market is saturated with air fryers. What comes after the air fryer? It's going to be a more complicated air fryer or something. An air fryer that blends and mixes at the same time and monitors your health and tells you what you should be eating. So I think wellness is a big issue, whether it's through supplements or diet. These devices are just going to continue to grow, but they're going to start to improve drastically and offer many, many more features than just an air fryer.
I'd agree. Household wellness. We also sell an air fryer, a lot of household products. But there's one thing that always shows, it goes with the times. For example, during COVID, it was a lot of things that you bought that you could take advantage of it in your own home. Right now, everything is very price sensitive because of inflation in Europe. Bud mentioned before, times in Europe are not easy at the moment. So consumers look at price sensitive products. You always have to have that certain twist. We've had good experience with the products we sell. We always say they're products that make life easier for our customers, and they also always have some sort of special innovation to them. So by showing a problem and the solution, that's always been a good idea, especially in times of crisis.
Great. Here's the more challenging one. Someone felt really confident in asking this. To Americans, it's long seemed like TV shopping technology was ahead of the game in Europe and other regions. But what constituted effective marketing tactics seemed to maybe lag what was happening in the US. How would you respond to that? And where is the marketplace today for those two things? Anyone can take it.
Ooh. Okay, so
can you do me a favor and repeat the question?
I can.
Thank you.
To Americans, it's long seemed like TV shopping technology was ahead of the game in Europe and in other regions, but what constituted effective marketing seemed to lag what was happening in the US. What would you say in response to that, and where does the market stand now?
So for instance, SMS text messaging, we were well advanced in Europe, 10 years ahead of the United States. You look at Africa, and they've been doing mobile payment for over a decade. So I don't look at borders like I used to look at them, because everybody now has gone to universities in each other's countries, and everybody is connected through the computer, and a doctor in the UK knows just as much as a doctor in most other countries now. So I think the advantage that Europe has is that they have a lot of these nations that support all this digital infrastructure, and you haven't had to wait for the private enterprises to come in and establish it. And that was the reason why Europe had an advantage, besides being, what people say, better educated, or they have more disposable income. They pay a lot of tax, and in return, they get a lot of support services, which has made a lot of these things possible. The US catches up. In some areas, they're ahead. In some areas, they're behind.
Thanks, buddy.
It's a wonderful answer, but what's also interesting too is we've seen, and this is tangential, but I think it connects to what you were talking about in terms of the education of the consumer and how consumers respond. What we do know is some of the recent polls and surveys and some of the trends is that in the US, college applicants are dropping, right? We're having a reduction of youngsters choosing a four-year college education as a path, either because it's too expensive or they don't see the economic benefits. And there's been some very interesting data showing that the overall wealth driver of going to college isn't what it used to be, even 10, 15 years ago. And so what that leads, though, is to a whole cadre of American youngsters and citizens who aren't going through a traditional four-year education. That means they aren't exposed to other critical thinking skills, people who look and smell and talk differently, different ideas and the like. And so it might end up being a less quote-unquote educated consumer in the next 10 to 15 years. And so what I'm curious about, what you mentioned, Bud, is how that changes the marketing, right? And it's no surprise that American marketers are having shorter messages. I mean, you get these YouTube pre-rolls, it's 5 seconds, right? That you got 5 seconds before the timer clicks where you move on, and you have these TikTok videos that are 10 seconds max, right? And that's how consumers are used to actually getting a response, where I think, you had mentioned, or someone had mentioned, a 30-minute infomercial in Germany. I think, Sergio, you mentioned you do 30-minute infomercials. I can't imagine an American audience now sitting and watching a 30-minute infomercial. So I think that's going to be an interesting change to see culturally how the European market and the American market responds and reacts to marketing in the future.
This is a good example of the difference. So I can speak for Europe and the UK. College education, it's the student that gets a loan. And in the UK, whatever you make over £25,000, 5% goes to repaying that loan. So if you never make that amount of money, you don't have to pay into it. So it's the parents don't worry about it. The students themselves don't have to worry about it. And because the education leading up to university is pretty good, university degrees is only a 3-year period.
Yeah, I also think the customers in Europe are quite demanding in many ways, just because regulation in Europe is, way more precise or specific than it is in the US. So the customer knows that in terms of data governance, in terms of what you're allowed. So the regulation, in my opinion, also leads to the fact that the customer is more aware of certain things, and he demands a lot in that aspect. So for us, when we sell products, there are a lot of specific things we need to focus on, but that also gives us a certain advantage on really having to look at the way we sell the products, you know, the way we communicate the products. So I think it's in the customers are different in many ways.
That's great. I think it's a great way to wrap up a conversation that could definitely continue for a while. Really appreciate everybody taking part. Ina, Bud, Sergio, we appreciate you being here. Chris, as always, thanks for running us through another great conversation. And we look forward to hopefully having this group back here maybe later this year to continue the conversation. Our next Take 20 episode is set for Wednesday, February 21st, when a group of experts on data collection and data privacy will share the latest need-to-know information for performance marketers. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. Finally, online registration continues for PDMI East, now just 2 months away, April 8th through 10th at Eden Rock, Miami Beach, with a wide array of educational and networking events planned. PDMI East promises to be the spring's best event. Badges are just $3.95 for PDMI members and $5.95 for non-members. Plus, by registering today, you jump to the head of the line to book your room at the host hotel. Visit thepdmi.com.
It's a straight shot to Portugal, right?
/PDMI.
Come on, Sergio, it's a straight shot. Lisbon to Miami, right there.
Yeah.
PDMI.com/PDMI-East to get your badge today. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the PDMI's Take 20. Be well. Take care. We'll see you soon.